Oh! Oh, get! Oh, something grab me, help me. Help me, pull me. The hell? Something grabbed me.
Hello viewers and also subscribers, which by the way, there are now 100 of you, so thank you. That's awesome. That's a big milestone. We're going to talk about marijuana arrests and mushrooms. So first off the bat is some new data coming out about where marijuana arrests have been, specifically in 2020, and where it's going. So a new FBI report has come out that has shown that now in the second year in a row, arrests for marijuana has been dwindling, and it dwindled a lot in 2020. And of course, it's one of those anomaly years because of the pandemic and everything, but it's also an anomaly year because of all the legalizations happening across the country. The report is showing that there's a 36% decrease in arrests from marijuana possession and things like that. Specifically 350,000 about, whereas the year before it was about 545,000. So that's a 30% drop. It's still a large number. It's still a surprisingly large number if you kind of look at it and consider that you can be in a state that's bordering one where it's entirely legal and still get arrested for possession of marijuana, but the fact that it's going down is overall a good thing. That is in addition to another story that I saw on the Hill that is reporting that Los Angeles is going to dismiss another 60,000 cannabis convictions, and that would release 60,000 people from the jail. That's a big number. They're now at about 125,000 people that they've released from jail because of cannabis convictions of the past. While the numbers are big and it's overall a good thing, my first thought in both of these is, why is this still happening? Why, since California was legalized in 2016, how has it taken this long to get these people out of jail? To think that they had 5 years more after cannabis was legalized in the state is kind of absurd to me. I can't even imagine why that would happen and why there has been this delay in that, and there are probably still some more now. But overall, again, a good thing it's happening as opposed to not happening at all. Okay, now second story, we're going to talk about psilocybin and where that's been and how that's going. Every week we're getting more and more stories come out, and there's a bit of a snowball effect happening across the country with just legislation around psilocybin. A lot of that legislation is about research, and makes me think then that in a couple of years we're just going to see this huge outpouring of positive research that has come out around studies of psilocybin. So for instance, the one big one is a federal study that was approved by the NIDA, which is the National Institute on Drug Abuse, that is allowing researchers from Johns Hopkins, from New York University, and from the University of Alabama. They're able to now do research to see whether psilocybin can help people who are addicted to tobacco. I would assume because what these psychedelics tend to do is they kind of release your typical patterns of your neural pathways, and you can see things from a fresh perspective. I would assume it would be helpful in the long run. This is all just from me having read that book, How to Change Your Mind, which is a great book, by the way. You should definitely check it out if you haven't. But I imagine that this is probably going to come out in favor of psilocybin helping in addiction cases. So that's a great thing. Look forward to seeing when this comes out. Another state that is allowing studies to happen is Florida. They're kind of taking the page out of a Texas book, where Texas recently had announced that they would be doing research for veterans suffering from PTSD to see if psilocybin can help with that. Florida is now kind of doing the same thing, however, broadening it. So it's going to be less about war veterans and going to be more about just anyone dealing with depression and seeing whether or not psilocybin can help with that. There are so many studies that are doing that exact thing. The bigger the studies, the more the studies, the better. So this is just going to fall into that category as well. And a few states have already done this. Like I just said, Texas is doing it. So we're getting a lot of research happening around psilocybin, which is expected, but we're getting a lot of that and not so much legislation quite yet. However, we do have one city, Seattle, who recently they decriminalized kind of the possession arrests that were happening around psychedelics, but now they're trying to take it a step further and decriminalize cultivation and the sharing of psychedelics, in particular psilocybin. During a city council meeting, this was brought up. They won't vote on it until a couple weeks from now, I believe, but I would assume that they will probably vote in favor, and Seattle will kind of follow in the footsteps of other kind of Northwestern or Pacific Northwest cities and states, Oregon being one of the main examples to follow. A quote from a council member says, "Hopefully the city, as tends to be the case on many impactful progressive issues in the state of Washington, can lead the way on setting the table for an important conversation many communities around the country are having." Many communities, and more communities happening day by day. These are just 3 stories that have happened within a week. I would assume that a week from now we'll have 3 more stories that just kind of fit the same exact bill. It's just happening all over the place. There's so much research happening with psilocybin, in particular psilocybin, but also psychedelics, and it's kind of exciting to watch, and seeing more and more studies come out showing the favorable things that these things can do. We will be living in a different society, I think, by the end of the 20s, where we are going to start seeing kind of storefronts that say entheogen therapy centers or whatever. Entheogen kind of being a more contemporary way of saying psychedelics that doesn't have the stigma of psychedelics. So people are trying to use entheogen, but it's the same thing. Yeah, we're going to see more of that stuff kind of popping up all across the country, and that's kind of an exciting world to think about in the future. And that's kind of what we have today. This is our first show with 100 subscribers, and we hope to hit 200 pretty soon. So we'll see you on Wednesday and talk about some more news. See you then.